how can we leverage small groups to co-build the choice infrastructure? As you just alluded to, we can't rely on culture to provide that architecture. So how can we use small groups to do so in the development of virtue?
Okay, so what I would say is something like we're going to be building culture, and in many ways scaffolding culture. So we can't rely on culture, but we're also not going to throw the damn thing out, otherwise we'd be in real trouble. So how do we do that? What I would say, and this goes back to that notion of virtue as being like geometric objects, like almost like the basic building blocks or the tools, the Legos, out of which we build larger, more complicated objects. Cleaning your room, right? Cleaning your room isn't just because you want your room nice. Cleaning your room is a basic, replicable expression of simple virtue. And there's a simple virtue. So the idea is to be able to identify what are the components, the small components, the basic components, the invariant across a very large number of contexts, and then begin to build those as dispositions, build habits of simple virtue, and then begin to collaborate in larger, more complicated cultural structures founded on these deep, integrous habits of simple virtue. So it's, imagine that you're beginning to do something like acrobatics, like acrobats in the circus. And let's just say you've decided that's what you're going to do, but none of you are acrobats, you're just people. Well, you're not going to begin by flying on the high trapeze. You can begin by doing things like building your own physical strength and flexibility. And you can begin by doing things like learning how to trust each other's trust and judgment on the ground, right? So that's the idea. Start at the basic stuff that is necessary to begin the process of getting to the higher levels. And part of it is collaboration. This is why group is the thing, right? You're building your individual, and then you're beginning to enter into the relational field. And what we're doing is we're simultaneously discovering the set of virtues and the shape and the definition of them and how they show up in different contexts. And then we're also practicing embodying them as increasingly sophisticated and durable habits so that we can then integrate them into something that becomes a solid foundation from which we can then extend to the next level, and then the next level, and the next level with more people, more complexity. So pick a project, pick anything, do it. Now do something different with the same group of people. Now do the first thing with a different group of people. See how that works? You're exploring the total phase space of how human beings build cultures, but now consciously, deliberately, intentionally, trying to use this, whatever wisdom we've developed to support a, not accelerated, well, yeah, accelerated, but it's more like more precise and less noisy learning of how to go about conscious searching of virtue. You ever heard of chess boxing?
No.
So, if you're good at chess, you're probably not good at boxing. If you're good at boxing, you're probably not good at chess, just roughly speaking. World-class boxers, I'm going to guess, for the most part, are not grandmasters in chess. And grandmasters in chess are probably not particularly effective at fisticuffs. What happens if you combine those into a single project? Interesting. There's a whole new set of capabilities that builds up. The point there is you're doing what's that called? Not a bricolage, but an alchemical admixture of different tools, saying, what happens when we begin to combine these? So form a boxing club, form a chess club, and then form a chess boxing club. By the way, chess boxing is a game that was developed where you play one round of speed chess, and then the bell rings and you shift to one round of boxing, and then you shift back to speed chess, and you iterate back and forth like 6 or 7 times. And notice and then discuss, how do you get better at this? How do you actually learn, collaborate on learning what's going on the interior of this learning frontier?
Any follow-up, shares, Jordan?
Yeah, I just want to titrate my understanding it's that we just take up more intentional projects with other people, and we vary those projects with different groups over time to see how different relational dynamics influence the core project.
With an orientation towards the foundation. So let me take, for example, the notion of education. At around 12, 10 to 12, kids are prepared to begin the process of learning something in the direction of vocation. So think of like a guild, like a masonry or fishing. But the point at the beginning is not learning how to fish. The point at the beginning is learning how to do things like time management and how to set objectives and how to discipline yourself so that you can do the things necessary to set objectives. What you notice is whether you're building a house or you're fishing, these are basics. Yeah. So the basics are the key. Focus on the basics. All the basics have to be embodied in real things. Otherwise, you're not learning them for real. So do the real thing. But notice what you're really doing is you're learning what the basics are and learning how to embody the basics in a fundamental capacity, right? You're literally making them part of who you are. So then when you shift domain, what you're noticing is what part of what I thought was the basics was actually just an artifact of the domain that I was in. And what part of it is actually generalizable, universal. Now I'm really beginning to get that foundation of the basics really clear and pure and hard. Now I'll expand what's above those basics. Now do I begin to build more facility beyond the level? Because I don't want to be bound. I don't want to be just somebody who gets the basics right. The basics are there to support me in going into larger things. More stake, more intensity, more complexity. That's the thing.
Wow, so straightforward. Thank you.
Yeah, it's simple, not easy, but simple.
That was an awesome way to end too, because that's essentially what this project is about. Embodying the basics, getting the right relationship with the basics. So before we close out, Jordan, any parting advice you have for Daniel and I, or everyone else here in the room who's committed to this project of cultivating mutual sovereignty?
Sure. We had the notion of the meta-crisis, and to recognize the meta-crisis isn't just a thought experiment, it's the actual world we're living in. And so be aware of the fact that the context that we're living in is increasing in intensity, right? The ripples are growing, and that while you may feel that you are moving backward, it's actually perhaps you are moving forward as an individual, but the context is getting harder. Right? Very important to keep that in mind. It may very well be that on a day-to-day basis, you are, quote unquote, out of sovereignty more and more and more. It's not because you are failing in growth. You may actually be increasing in growth, but the context may be getting harder and much harder. Just remember that. It's nature is providing us with the ultimate test harness to build our collective sovereignty.